when we spoke to him last week, the days blend together. When he and D Haslam talked, he mentioned how we need to see the rookies this year.
Right.
So you're clearly preparing us to suffer through Dylan Gabriel starting football games this year. There's no secretly about it. We aren't expecting it.
Yeah.
Because Dylan's been that bad on the practice field. Now, again, to be fair to that, he's had some good throws. It's not all been a disaster, but this week been a disaster.
I just wonder if it gets loud to a point.
Overexposed.
Himself with Kenny Pickett, who is not an NFL quarterback. He's flatly not an NFL quarterback. We have seen it every chance he's had, every opportunity he's had to play. Flacco, who I just think if you're the Browns, what are you doing? Why?
Right, also.
Gabriel, who through no fault of his own commits one of my cardinal sins of quarterbacking, which is he's tiny. And so, he's tiny. Yeah. And the fact that whatever those training camp stats are worth, and maybe it's next to nothing, it's not nothing, and it's not 0% that they're worth. And every time we show him, he's at least in line with everybody. And so I just think there is
generally better.
I think there is.
What if I told you that Kevin Stefanski, the so-called offensive genius, is systematically destroying Shedeur Sanders' career to cover up his own failures? While everyone's focused on quarterback battles and draft politics, the real story is hiding in plain sight. Stefanski's offense is broken, outdated, and getting exposed daily in Cleveland. But instead of admitting his scheme doesn't work, he's found the perfect scapegoat, a fifth-round rookie with a famous last name. And the evidence is more damning than you think. For 2 years, Kevin Stefanski has been hailed as an innovative play caller, a quarterback whisperer who could maximize any talent. But here's what the media won't tell you. His offense is failing spectacularly, and he knows it. The checkdowns, the predictable play calling, the inability to score in the red zone, it's all systematic failure disguised as player development. And now, with Shedeur Sanders showing flashes of brilliance despite being buried on the depth chart, Stefanski has found his perfect cover story. Every time his offense sputters, every time they can't move the ball, every time they look completely out of sync, he can point to the inexperienced rookie and deflect blame from his outdated system. Today, I'm exposing how this manipulation works, why Stefanski is terrified of Shedeur's success, and how this conspiracy goes deeper than anyone realizes. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that Cleveland's front office doesn't want you to see. Kevin Stefanski's offense is fundamentally broken. While everyone's debating quarterback talent, the real issue is a play-calling system that's been exposed and exploited by every defensive coordinator in the league. Look at the evidence from training camp. During 11-on-11 drills inside the 10-yard line, the Browns' offense took 9 snaps and managed just one competitive play, a screen pass to Robert Fan Jr. 9 snaps. One legitimate scoring opportunity. That's not a quarterback problem, that's a systematic failure of offensive design. But here's where it gets interesting. When Dylan Gabriel was running those plays, struggling with a lot of checkdowns, and moving frantically in the pocket, Stefanski's response wasn't to adjust the system. It was to give Gabriel more reps, 113 first-team reps compared to Shedeur's 70. Why? Because Gabriel's struggles validate Stefanski's narrative that the system works, it's just the players who need to develop. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders has been surgical with limited opportunities. Higher completion percentage, more touchdowns per attempt, faster reads. But instead of celebrating this efficiency, Stefanski has systematically limited his exposure to first-team reps. Why would an offensive coordinator restrict access to his most effective quarterback? Because Shedeur's success exposes the lie. When Shedeur steps in during those brief red zone sessions and drops perfect throws with precision and poise, it reveals what the offense could look like with proper execution. It shows that the problem isn't talent, it's the system itself. And that's exactly what Stefanski can't afford to have exposed on a larger scale. The most damning evidence? Reports from practice observers noting that Shedeur made it look easy during his limited opportunities, while Gabriel's performance was described as rough and non-competitive. Yet Stefanski continues to structure practice to minimize Shedeur's exposure while maximizing Gabriel's opportunities to struggle publicly. This isn't player development. This is systematic manipulation designed to protect a coordinator who knows his scheme is failing but refuses to adapt. Here's where Kevin Stefanski's manipulation gets truly sinister. He's not just limiting Shedeur Sanders' opportunities, he's strategically positioning those limited opportunities to create the perfect scapegoat narrative when his offense inevitably fails. Think about the setup. Shedeur gets 70 first-team reps compared to Gabriel's 113, but when the offense struggles, who gets blamed? The inexperienced rookie who hasn't had adequate preparation time. It's the perfect cover story for systematic offensive failures. But let's examine what happens when Shedeur actually gets those rare opportunities. During his brief red zone work, he delivered immediately. Clean throws, proper reads, efficient execution. The sideline buzzed with excitement because suddenly the offense looked functional. But instead of building on this success, Stefanski quickly rotated him out. Why? Because sustained success from Shedeur would expose the real problem. If a fifth-round rookie with minimal first-team reps can make the offense look competent, what does that say about the coordinator who's been struggling to get production from more experienced quarterbacks? The most revealing moment came during day 9 of training camp. When Gabriel had his emotional collapse, walking off the field after a brutal interception, completely rattled in front of coaches and media, Stefanski's response was telling. Instead of questioning whether his system was putting too much pressure on struggling quarterbacks, he doubled down on the narrative that players need to develop within his scheme. Meanwhile, Shedeur's limited appearances continued to show poise, composure, and natural command. But Stefanski has been careful to frame these successes as flashes rather than indicators of readiness. He's controlling the narrative by controlling the exposure. The Tyler Huntley signing reveals the depth of this strategy. When injuries to Flacco, Pickett, and Gabriel's hamstring issues suddenly cleared the path for Shedeur to get significant preseason playing time, Stefanski couldn't risk a full showcase. Huntley wasn't brought in for depth. He was brought in to split reps and prevent Shedeur from having a complete breakout performance that would expose the coordinator's failures. Consider the timing. Just as Shedeur was positioned to finally get extended first-team work, suddenly there's another veteran quarterback to manage the load and provide stability. It's not coincidence, it's calculated protection of Stefanski's reputation. The most damning evidence of this scapegoat strategy? Stefanski's public comments consistently emphasize development and process when discussing Shedeur, while avoiding any acknowledgement of his superior performance metrics. He's pre-programming the excuse. If the offense struggles, it's because the rookie wasn't ready, not because the system is fundamentally flawed. This manipulation allows Stefanski to maintain his reputation as an offensive innovator while systematically undermining the one quarterback who's shown the ability to execute efficiently within his scheme. Kevin Stefanski's treatment of Shedeur Sanders isn't just about protecting his offensive system, it's about protecting his authority as the supposed quarterback whisperer. And Shedeur's natural command and football IQ represent an existential threat to Stefanski's carefully constructed image. Here's what terrifies Stefanski. Shedeur doesn't need extensive coaching to understand concepts that other quarterbacks struggle with for months. When observers note that Shedeur looks calm, comfortable, in control during his limited opportunities, they're describing something that can't be taught, natural quarterback instincts that bypass Stefanski's complex developmental process. This creates a dangerous precedent for a coordinator who's built his reputation on being able to develop quarterbacks through his system. If Shedeur can walk in and immediately execute at a high level without extensive tutoring, what does that say about the necessity of Stefanski's elaborate coaching methods? The evidence is in the practice reports. While Gabriel requires constant guidance and still struggles with reads, Shedeur processes information quickly and makes decisive throws. While Gabriel moves frantically in the pocket under pressure, Shedeur maintains composure and finds open receivers. These aren't skills that Stefanski can claim credit for developing. They're natural abilities that expose the limitations of his coaching impact. But here's where the manipulation gets sophisticated. Instead of celebrating Shedeur's natural abilities, Stefanski has reframed them as potential problems. The same composure that makes Shedeur effective gets described as needing to understand the system better. The same quick processing that leads to accurate throws gets characterized as still learning the nuances. This linguistic manipulation serves a dual purpose. It diminishes Shedeur's obvious readiness while positioning Stefanski as the gatekeeper of true understanding of the offense. It's a classic power move designed to maintain control over the narrative. The most revealing aspect of this fear-based strategy is how Stefanski handles Shedeur's interactions with teammates. Reports suggest that players respond positively to Shedeur's leadership and presence, but Stefanski has been careful to limit his exposure to team leadership opportunities. Why? Because natural leadership can't be coached, and if players gravitate toward Shedeur's command presence, it undermines Stefanski's role as the primary authority figure in offensive development. Consider this. When Shedeur told reporters "I'm good" after being held out for supposed arm soreness, he was directly contradicting the team's official narrative. A truly confident coordinator would appreciate this kind of competitive fire and availability. But Stefanski's system requires players to defer to his judgment about their readiness and health status. Shedeur's willingness to challenge these narratives, combined with his obvious talent, represents everything Stefanski fears: a quarterback who doesn't need extensive development, doesn't require complex coaching, and can succeed despite the system rather than because of it. This is why Stefanski continues to emphasize process and development when discussing Shedeur. He's not preparing him for success. He's preparing excuses for why success, if it comes, shouldn't be attributed to natural talent that bypasses his coaching influence. Kevin Stefanski isn't just manipulating Shedeur Sanders' opportunities on the field. He's orchestrating a sophisticated media campaign to control public perception and protect his reputation when the inevitable offensive struggles continue. The most obvious example of this manipulation is the selective release of practice statistics. When reporters noted that Dillon Gabriel has 21 more reps than Shedeur coming into today and only 2 more completions, 3 less touchdowns, 2 more interceptions, Stefanski's response wasn't to address the efficiency disparity. Instead, he emphasized Gabriel's mental game and film room discipline, intangible qualities that can't be measured but sound impressive to casual observers. This is classic misdirection. By focusing on unmeasurable attributes like processing skills and understanding the system, Stefanski deflects attention from the measurable results that favor Shedeur. It's much easier to claim Gabriel has superior mental preparation than to explain why his actual performance metrics are inferior despite receiving significantly more opportunities. But the manipulation goes deeper. Notice how Stefanski frames Shedeur's limited opportunities as developmental rather than acknowledging resource scarcity. When asked about the rep distribution, he doesn't say, "We're giving Gabriel more chances because we think he's better." Instead, he uses language like Shedeur has ground to make up and he's working hard to get in the game. This linguistic framing serves multiple purposes. It suggests that Shedeur's limited reps are his own fault, that he needs to earn opportunities that Gabriel receives automatically. It also pre-programs the excuse that if Shedeur struggles when finally given chances, it's because he didn't put in enough work rather than because he was systematically denied preparation time. The most damning evidence of media manipulation came during the Day 9 practice coverage. When Gabriel had his emotional breakdown, walking off the field after a brutal interception, multiple reporters described it as Gabriel being rattled and showing a lack of leadership and control. Yet Stefanski's post-practice comments focused on Gabriel's high standards for himself and competitive nature. Meanwhile, when Shedeur delivered precise throws during his limited red zone work, making it look easy and generating sideline excitement, Stefanski's comments emphasized that he was still learning and needed to continue developing. Same performance level, completely different narrative framing. This selective interpretation extends to injury reporting. When Shedeur was held out forearm soreness but then told reporters "I'm good," the discrepancy should have raised questions about communication and decision-making. Instead, Stefanski used it as evidence that Shedeur needs to understand the team-first mentality and trust the process. The Tyler Huntley signing represents the culmination of this media strategy. Instead of acknowledging that injuries had finally cleared the path for Shedeur to get extended playing time, Stefanski framed Huntley's arrival as adding veteran depth and providing competition. The media dutifully reported this as roster management rather than recognizing it as a strategic limitation of Shedeur's showcase opportunities. Through careful control of information flow and narrative framing, Stefanski has created a media environment where his offensive failures can be attributed to player development needs rather than systematic coaching inadequacies. Here's where Kevin Stefanski's elaborate manipulation strategy faces its ultimate test, and why it's destined to backfire spectacularly. All the careful narrative control, limited reps, and scapegoat preparation in the world can't change what happens when Shedeur Sanders finally gets extended playing time under the lights. The preseason opener against Carolina represents Stefanski's worst nightmare, a situation where his preferred quarterbacks are unavailable, forcing him to give Shedeur significant snaps with a national audience watching. All the development excuses and system understanding narratives become irrelevant when real football starts. And here's what Stefanski knows but won't admit: Shedeur is going to perform. Despite the limited first-team reps, despite the lack of chemistry with top receivers, despite being thrown into action without the preparation afforded to other quarterbacks, Shedeur's natural ability and football IQ will shine through. When that happens, every aspect of Stefanski's manipulation gets exposed. The rep distribution that favored struggling quarterbacks over efficient ones. The narrative that development was more important than results. The suggestion that Shedeur wasn't ready despite consistently outperforming his competition in limited opportunities. The most damaging revelation will be the efficiency comparison. If Shedeur delivers clean, decisive football with backup players and minimal preparation, it exposes how much better the offense could have been all along with proper resource allocation. Every check down from Gabriel, every misread, every red zone failure suddenly looks like a coaching decision rather than a player limitation. But Stefanski's biggest fear isn't just that Shedeur will perform well, it's that he'll perform well immediately, without the extensive development process that Stefanski claims is necessary. This would reveal that natural talent and football intelligence matter more than complex coaching systems, undermining the entire foundation of Stefanski's reputation. The locker room dynamics will shift instantly. Players who've watched Shedeur deliver in practice despite limited opportunities will start questioning why he wasn't getting chances earlier. The process that Stefanski has used to justify questionable decisions will look like politics rather than player development. Media coverage will become impossible to control. When reporters see Shedeur executing efficiently with less preparation than his competitors received, the questions about coaching decisions and resource allocation become unavoidable. All the careful narrative framing collapses under the weight of obvious performance disparities. The ultimate irony is that Stefanski's attempt to use Shedeur as a scapegoat for offensive failures will backfire by highlighting how much better the offense could have been with different decision-making. Instead of protecting his reputation, the manipulation will expose his limitations as both a play caller and talent evaluator. This is why the Browns brought in Tyler Huntley at the last minute, not for depth, but as a final attempt to limit Shedeur's exposure and maintain plausible deniability. But it's too late. The stage is set, the audience is watching, and all the manipulation in the world can't change what happens when talent finally gets its opportunity. Stefanski's puppet master strategy is about to be exposed by the very player he tried to control. The evidence is overwhelming. Kevin Stefanski isn't developing Shedeur Sanders, he's systematically suppressing him to protect his own reputation. The limited reps, the narrative manipulation, the strategic scapegoating, it's all designed to deflect blame from a coordinator whose system is failing. But here's the beautiful irony. By trying to control Shedeur's opportunities, Stefanski has only made his eventual success more obvious and damaging to the coaching staff's credibility. When Shedeur performs in Carolina, and he will, every excuse, every development narrative, every rep distribution decision gets exposed as manipulation rather than coaching. This isn't just about one quarterback or one coordinator. This is about how power structures in the NFL protect themselves by controlling narratives and limiting opportunities for players who threaten the established order. Shedeur Sanders represents everything the old guard fears: natural talent that doesn't need their validation, leadership that doesn't require their development, and success that exposes their limitations. The Browns organization thought they could bury a fifth-round pick behind politics and process. But talent has a way of rising to the surface, and when it does, all the manipulation in the world can't hide the truth. Friday night in Charlotte isn't just a preseason game, it's the moment Kevin Stefanski's house of cards comes crashing down. And the player he tried to use as a scapegoat will be the one holding the match. Here's what I want you to do. Watch that Panthers game closely. Don't just look at the stats. Watch how Shedeur processes information, how he commands the huddle, how he executes under pressure with minimal preparation. Then ask yourself, if he can do this with backup players and limited reps, what could he have done with proper support all along? Drop a comment below with your prediction. How many drives will it take for Shedeur to make Stefanski's manipulation obvious to everyone watching? I'm betting it's fewer than you think. And if you want to see how this quarterback conspiracy unfolds throughout the season, make sure you're subscribed because this story is just getting started. The puppet master thought he was pulling the strings, but he's about to discover that some players can't be controlled. Hit that notification bell, because when Shedeur lights up Carolina and exposes this whole charade, you're going to want to be here for the breakdown of how one coordinator's ego nearly destroyed a franchise quarterback's development, and how talent ultimately won out over politics. The revolution starts Friday night. Don't miss it!